You know, we have this peculiar idea that breaking the rules means rebellion. Loud protests, dramatic exits, burning bridges in spectacular fashion. But I don't mean that kind of breaking away. I mean when you really begin to see through the elaborate game society has been playing, and you simply stop playing along. And here's what nobody tells you. The moment a sensitive soul stops pretending, something ancient and terrifying wakes up inside them. Do you ever feel like you're watching a play where everyone knows their lines except you? That's not confusion, my friend. That's the beginning of clarity. Nobody tells you this, but if you're the kind of person who feels everything, the emotional temperature of rooms, the unspoken tensions at dinner tables, the weight of someone's sadness 3 seats away, you've probably spent your entire life trying to become smaller, quieter, more palatable. You've learned to apologize for taking up space, for having needs, for not thriving in the chaos that seems to energize everyone else. And here's the paradox, the very thing that makes you different. That exquisite sensitivity, that capacity to sense what others cannot, has been labeled as your weakness, your flaw, your problem to fix. Do you ever feel exhausted from constantly translating yourself into a language that diminishes you? Do you feel that instant shame when you need to leave the party early, decline the invitation, choose silence over small talk? But what if everything we've been taught about fitting in is backwards? What if your withdrawal isn't weakness but wisdom? This is where it gets dangerous, because the moment you stop forcing yourself into shapes that were never meant to contain you, society doesn't know what to do with you anymore. And that's precisely when the transformation begins. Let me share with you what happens when a sensitive soul finally walks away from the rules that were killing them softly. Let me share 5 things that happen when you finally stop playing society's game. 5 shifts so profound that once you see them, you can never unsee them. The first thing you must understand is this. The moment you stop pretending, everyone around you becomes uncomfortable. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your authenticity exposes their performance. Think of it this way. Imagine you're in a theater watching a play, and suddenly one actor stops reciting their lines, and not relief that she was taking care of herself, but anger. "How could you abandon us?" they said. But she hadn't abandoned anyone. She'd simply stopped abandoning herself. Here's the profound part. When you withdraw your participation from systems that require your self-betrayal to function, those systems reveal their true nature. They need your compliance, your silence, your smallness. And when you refuse to provide it, the game collapses, at least for you. This is why sensitive souls who finally walk away often report feeling like they've woken from a dream. They have. The second, even more important thing, you discover you've been bleeding energy your entire life, and suddenly the hemorrhaging stops. Think about a garden with dozens of holes in the irrigation system, water leaking everywhere except where it's needed. Your sensitivity has made you exquisitely aware of others' needs. But here's what nobody tells you. You've been taught that awareness equals obligation. That if you can sense someone's discomfort, you must fix it. That if you can feel the room's emotional weather, you must become the climate control system. But watch what happens in nature. A tree doesn't deplete itself trying to grow branches for every passing bird. It grows according to its own design, and the birds that resonate with that particular tree find their way there. The tree doesn't chase birds. It doesn't apologize for not being a different kind of tree. When you finally stop performing emotional labor for people who haven't earned access to your depths, something miraculous happens. You feel your own energy for the first time in years. Maybe ever. That constant exhaustion you thought was just who you are. It wasn't. It was the cost of betraying yourself hourly. Do you ever notice how drained you feel after forcing yourself to be social when every cell in your body was screaming for solitude? That's not introversion. That's self-abandonment. And here's the secret. The energy you've been giving away so freely, it was never meant for everyone. It was meant for your own becoming, for your creativity, for the quiet work of understanding yourself. When you reclaim it, you don't become selfish. You become whole. The third thing, which is perhaps the most insidious, is this. You realize that most of what you call guilt is actually just other people's disappointment that you're no longer manageable. Let me be very clear about this. The people who benefited from your smallness will call your expansion selfishness. The ones who fed on your compliance will call your boundaries cruelty. And they'll use the most sophisticated psychological weapons to bring you back in line, because your freedom threatens their comfort. It's like trying to pour the ocean into a teacup. Your entire life, people have been trying to compress your vastness into containers they can control. And you've been apologizing for overflowing. But here's what changes everything. The moment you stop apologizing, you see that the problem was never your size. It was their container. Consider this situation. A woman says no to hosting Christmas dinner for the first time in 15 years because she's exhausted. The family doesn't say, "We understand, you've been carrying this alone." They say, "You're tearing the family apart." But she's not tearing anything apart. She's simply refusing to be the glue that holds together people who won't hold themselves. This is the test, my friend. Can you sit with someone else's disappointment without shape-shifting to relieve it? Can you let someone be angry at your boundaries without negotiating them away? Because true freedom begins the moment you realize that being liked by everyone means being known by no one, least of all yourself. And the fourth, the most critical of all, is this. You discover that the world didn't end when you stopped holding it together. In fact, it was barely noticed. This might sting at first. You've spent so much energy managing other people's emotions, anticipating their needs, and preventing conflicts before they arise. You thought you were indispensable, but when you finally step back, the world keeps turning. People solve their own problems, or they don't, and they learn to live with unsolved problems. Either way, it wasn't your job. Think of it as a stage play where you've been convinced you're the director, the lighting crew, and half the cast. But when you step off stage, the play continues. Sometimes better, sometimes worse, but always without needing you to orchestrate it. Your absence creates space for others to step into their own responsibility, or it reveals that there was never really a play at all, just your exhausting one-person show. I want you to really sit with this. How many of your relationships are actually reciprocal, and how many are just you performing the relationship for both people? When you stop initiating, how many people initiate with you? When you stop asking how they are, how many ask about you? The answers will tell you everything you need to know about where your energy belongs. Here's where it gets interesting. This isn't about keeping score or cutting people off coldly. It's about finally seeing clearly. And once you see clearly, you can't unsee. You realize that half your stress was self-imposed, born from a belief that you had to manage everything and everyone to be worthy of existing. The fifth and final thing, you begin to understand that your sensitivity was never the problem. It was your response to living in a world not designed for sensitive people. All your life, you've been told something is wrong with you. Too emotional, Too intense. Too much. Can't you just toughen up? Get thicker skin. Stop being so affected by everything. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. You're not broken. You're responding sanely to an insane situation. It's like being a person with extraordinary hearing forced to live next to an airport and being told the problem is your ears. No, the problem is the airport. Your sensitivity isn't a disorder. It's a different order of perception. And the moment you stop treating it as something to fix and start treating it as something to honor, everything changes. Watch what happens when you finally design your life around your actual nature, instead of contorting your nature to fit someone else's design. You stop going to loud bars and start taking long walks. You stop forcing yourself through small talk and start having 3-hour conversations with the 2 people who actually see you. You stop attending every social obligation and start protecting your solitude like the sacred resource it is. And something remarkable happens. You stop feeling like an alien. Not because the world suddenly understands you, but because you finally understand yourself. You realize that all those years of feeling like you didn't fit, you were right. You don't fit into systems designed for people who are half asleep. And that's not a bug. That's a feature. So here we are, back to where we started. What happens when a sensitive soul finally ignores society's rules? They don't become reckless or cruel or selfish, despite what everyone warns. They become real. And reality, true reality, is the most radical act of all in a world built on pretending. All of these connect because they're different expressions of the same fundamental shift. The moment you stop asking permission to exist as you are, you stop performing normalcy. You stop managing other people's comfort at the cost of your own authenticity. And you discover that the thing you were most afraid of, rejection, isolation, being too much or not enough, that thing was already happening. You were already alone, but you were alone while pretending to be someone else. At least now you're alone while being yourself. And that makes all the difference. Here's what this all means. You are not failing at being human. You're succeeding at being a different kind of human, the kind that refuses to participate in collective numbness, the kind that won't pretend the emperor is wearing clothes, the kind that values truth over comfort, authenticity over approval, and depth over breadth. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are waking up in a world that prefers sleepwalking. And yes, that will make you unpopular. It will cost you relationships that were built on your silence. It will require you to disappoint people who've grown comfortable with your self-betrayal. But the alternative is spending your entire life as a ghost of who you could have been, haunting a life that was never yours. The next time you find yourself apologizing for needing what you need, for feeling what you feel, for being unable to thrive in environments that corrode your soul, remember what we've explored today. You're not the problem. You never were. You're just a sensitive instrument in a world that's been playing the wrong song. And the moment you stop trying to dance to music you can't hear, you'll finally hear your own rhythm. Remember this, you are the universe experiencing itself through the aperture of your particular sensitivity. Not everyone gets to feel this deeply, to see this clearly, or to sense the subtle frequencies that others miss. It's not a curse. It's a kind of sight. And the world needs people who can see in the dark, even if it doesn't know how to thank them for it. And so the journey continues. Not toward becoming someone else, but toward becoming more fully yourself. The game never ends, but at least now you know you're allowed to play by different rules. Your rules. the ones written in the language of your own becoming.